bit of a buffer in case things maybe go over. Well,
And your name is Nick Brittle.
Brit. Like,
Nick Britt.
mm-hmm.
Nick Britt. Okay.
Yes. So, all right, we're getting loaded up, folks. How are you doing? This is Nick with Junkie Base Studios. I have the American icon John Massari with me today. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I know you are an extremely busy man, and again, thank you so much. If you do not know John's work, go turn on your TV and go through any channel or turn on just about any movie, and you're going to hear pieces of his work. Now, John, I told you I'd promise somebody something real fast. My buddy Travis, he's my tattooist and my good buddy at Permanent Vacation, wanted me to tell you hi. He loves your work, and he's still waiting on the Waxworks record of Killer Clowns from Outer Space to come.
Well, Travis, hello. How are you? And hello to the Junkie Base audience. And thank you for having me on today. I very, very much appreciate it.
Well, again, thank you for our time. Now, you are a film composer. I know we've got
Mm-hmm.
people tuning in who don't exactly know what that is. Can you kind of give a short, kind of a short, what you do or a description of what a film composer actually is?
Well, the film composer is part of the film, the storytelling aspect of a movie. I should say storytelling, emotional aspect of a film. And through music, the composer uh, creates a link with the story, the film, and the audience. When you think about it, a lot of movies you see, in real life, I mean, if you're walking down a dark hall, you're not hearing music playing off the side, right? You're not hearing any scary music or anything like that. Or if someone wins a football game, there's like triumphant music. You don't actually hear it when you're playing the game. So to accentuate that emotion of victory or of horror or of love and romance, the full spectrum of human emotion, you have a music score that bridges that gap, that kind of brings the audience in to the film. And often it's very subliminal. You almost don't know it's there.
And I think one thing, and I will say as a musician, I can say this from sitting back objectively, just plucking a note a little too hard can kill the entire
Hmm.
emotion and feeling. You are very detailed down to the slightest note pluck to make
Hmm.
sure it's it comes across and doesn't ruin the moment. I mean, it is a very detailed process.
Hmm. Yes, it is. And for people starting out in the business, they'll they'll be shocked to see how low of a level their music is in comparison with everything else. And I've had to learn to step back and kind of see the whole picture. In other
Mm.
words, the movie is not a music video.
Yeah.
So there are times where the music is very upfront. It's like right, the dimension of the music is, all three dimensions of the music are right in your face. And then there are times where it's like, Wait a minute, where is it?" But if you let, uh, with the gift of time, I mean, I've seen movies that I've done, and I'm going, "Oh, music level is fine," because it's sitting right there in the balance of everything and part of the film, which is important.
So yeah, so
So I hope that answers the question.
yeah, yeah, and I just
Yeah.
wanted people to, yeah. There's a lot of people who, okay, it's music in a film. They don't think or realize it's not. They don't realize how much technicality and knowledge it actually takes
Right.
to be able to do that, and it's just fascinating. Now, one thing I've been very curious about, I reached out to you a couple weeks ago, interviewed Sean Carlin, and we had some of his huge modular setup and you
Hmm.
were liking some of the photos. Do you actually use, especially a modular setup, a huge one, is that used in film composing, or is that just something of your fancy that you like?
Well, if you're talking about a modular setup with all kinds of voltage code oscillators and filters, and where you have to connect everything with cables and what have you,
Yeah.
I haven't really worked that in many, many years.
Hmm.
And um, there's a reason why people that are into synthesizers, there's a reason why synthesizer patches are called patches, because you actually had to patch cables into, if you had a sine wave and then you put it through a filter or a voltage or an oscillator to play with the sound, to sculpt it to get something unique. You used to patch cables from one to the next and mix and match.
Yeah.
And I you would have to, before they were programmable, you would have to write all this stuff down, and you would have like a 3-ring binder with all your patch setups, right? So the answer is basically no. I do have access to one. My brother-in-law in San Diego, he makes uh, synthesizers and all the necessary circuitry. He makes it from scratch. He's an engineer, and it's
Oh
one of his
wow.
hobbies. So he's been building it. We haven't worked on anything together, and so one day maybe I'll get him to haul everything up here one day, or maybe I'll just bring my laptop down there and record at his place. Um, but as far as hardware, using hardware, I'm really liking the quality of plugins. It's not the same thing.
Hmm.
The plugins do, can um, very accurately reproduce the sound of some of the classic synthesizers, and I have several versions of just about every synthesizer you can imagine in plug-in form. Um, there are the 100% recall is the biggest feature for me. Because what the big frustration in the old days, I'd set up like a sequential circuits Prophet 5 or an Oberheim, um, or like a Juno 106. And then the client says, I need a little bit of something else. This has to be changed. The scene's shorter, or can you add something to it? And then when you go back in and you try to replicate what you did, because they after a while, after leaving some equipment on for a while, it starts to sound different.
Yeah.
The actual character changes a little bit. It's not like a plucked sound will sound like a tuba. It's just that that pluck sound doesn't have, there's something that's missing, and that comes from all the circuitry heating up. It kind of plays with the sound, so you can never get 100% recall. And and that's what I like about digital audio workstations. I have
Hmm.
complete 100. Whatever I did 3 years ago, if I call it back up, it's going to be the same settings until I change it.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to do that with an analog setup. That's why the great classic pop music and rock and all the genres that are recorded on analog, what made them special is that everyone learned their part really well, and they made an awesome performance,
Hmm.
right? And that takes a lot of work, a lot of skill, and a lot of work to get a performance that everyone's going to love for eternity.
Yeah.
Whereas now, if someone does a really good performance and I need to change it somehow, I can go microscopically in and edit it any way I wish to match up with, because often, especially in past 2 years, musicians are performing music of mine based on a piano sketch that I give them.
Hmm.
So they're doing all their interpretations, which is really great. It, it adds a great dynamics. But when you match them up, certain things don't match up. Like the
Hmm.
bass player isn't exactly going to match up with the guitar player because they weren't in the same room playing,
Yeah.
or the string sections. I have a variety of string sections throughout the world play, and they all have a different style. So with the gift of digital audio editing, I can correct some of that and make adjustments so that everyone blends better. But back to your question, I I do have hardware synthesizers. They're at a friend of mine's studio, and every once in a while I take them for a spin. But the way I work is in the virtual world.
And I wasn't sure because film composing is drastically different than music production. You are on a much larger scale, dealing with many, many people typically. So,
Yes.
so that adds to it. Now, how has we're set up to do remote recording? I can record anybody into our DAW here,
Mm,
and back and forth, and do it live, real time if they've got a broadband connection.
right.
How has that kept things going? I know you guys got put in a hard lockdown. Has that
Hmm.
kept stuff from coming to a standstill for you being able to do stuff like that?
No, it hasn't. I did a Christmas album
Hmm.
a year and a half ago. Well, it wasn't this year. It was last year. I did it, and it went very well. I recorded in Europe, but I didn't go to Europe. I
Yeah.
just sat there and watched them on Zoom, and was able to make little note. I could hear it basically in real time,
Hmm.
and then a few days later, the files I would get the files via Dropbox, and they would sound absolutely wonderful. So that's how I did that, and then often, like for a drummer, like
Hmm.
I've had Adam Gomez. He's the drummer for the Dickies. Play some tracks for me, and I've given him just a piano version of the song, and I'll say, just go to town, do express with your musicality and your uh, 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 abilities, express this with your drums. And first take was like, of course, he worked on his part,
Hmm.
and then he recorded it and sent it back to me, and it just was absolutely awesome. It was, I only gave him like a few notes. I says, at this particular section, if you can just keep straight time, something really cool that's just straight time, and then do all your magic everywhere else. Do all the things you do, because I sometimes like the random energy that you get from musicians when you don't over explain things, or
Uh,
overwrite their part. I want it to be a good experience for them, so that when they listen to it, they felt really good about it. They were able to express themselves instead of like sticking them in a box and making them just play. If that's the case, I can program the drums.
yeah,
you know
that's really cool. You actually are giving them that. That's neat for me to find out. I didn't know if it's, yeah. You see some compositions like classical. It's like this is what you're playing. There's no deviation. I didn't
right.
know how that worked. If there was actual more artist, a little bit of artist interpretation, or not.
Well, for orchestral music, yeah, it's always good to. You don't want to tell an entire percussion section in an orchestra, that they have everything: tubular bells, glockenspiels, xylophones, timpani, piatti, snare drums, grandcassa, which is the big bass drum. You just don't want to tell, hey guys, just jam with the orchestra, because there's no time to jam. It says we have to have a 3-minute piece of music recorded, performed, and recorded within 50 minutes.
Oh,
So
really?
so it's very good to have everything in that type of situation. It's very good to have everything notated. Then you can do sweetening afterwards. You can
Yeah.
give the tracks to a great percussionist, or probably some sort of soloist or sound designer guy, and say, listen, I need some colors over here. I need some kind of a driving groove that'll build up to this transition, and that's where you can bring in the extra colors and um, welcomed chaos to the piece.
I like that. Welcome chaos. Now, this is personally, I've always enjoyed watching conductors.
Hmm.
It is just everyone has their technique. One of my favorite things about going to the symphony. Some of my favorite pictures are of you conducting, in the
Hmm.
studio. Do you get a rush from that? I mean, is that like when you start conducting, is that like a normal musician going on stage to perform when you're stepping in front of that group of people? That's something for my own curiosity there.
Well, the first, well, okay, let me see. It's a bit of heaven and a bit of terror, because the first thing you're worried about, the very first thing you're worried about, that everyone's part has been transcribed correctly, and what they are reading is accurate.
Mhm.
So I usually just like let the piece play to check for notes.
Mhm.
And I go, oh, great, I'm not hearing any wrong notes. Or if there is a wrong note, there on rare occasions there'll be somebody made a mistake. But when there are all the notes are right, good. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do, everyone. The brass, this section here, I know it says fortissimo, but I wanted all the notes to be short. You don't have to like slam them.
Mhm.
You just you can go a little bit easy on them. Just make them short. The strings here, the legato, you just make sure. I don't want too much expressivo. In other words, I don't want them to vibrate the bow that much.
Mhm.
It's like almost close to non vibrato. At that area. Give them all these little things, and then I'll tell them, give them some sort of emotional note.
Mhm.
I'll say this has to be jubilant. It just needs just pure joy. So it's like they actually like simple directions.
Mhm.
Or I was in a recording session and I go, just think, this is kind of like a James Bond sort of groovy, cool. You're coming up to the big mansion of the
Mhm.
bad guy, something like that, or um, so it's you're giving them little clues that they can somehow subliminally express themselves that
Okay.
way and get into the groove and the feeling of the piece.
All right.
There was one piece in particular in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I said, think of in this particular piece here. It's called March of the Clowns, where there's a scene where the clowns are vacuuming up people in the middle of the street, and I just wanted this macabre march, right? And it has an odd tempo, odd meter, not an odd tempo. It has an odd meter.
Mhm.
It goes into like 4/4 and then 7/4, 4/4, 7/4, 3/4, something like that.
Mix it in jazz.
Yeah, exactly. Just think of. I'm sure you've all seen a documentary of Nazi tanks rolling into
Mhm.
Poland, unopposed. You know,
Yeah.
think of it, and everyone says, "Okay, I can identify with that." I've most good classical musicians are very worldly and are familiar with world history, because you don't study music unless you know history. One of the fascinating things in my music history class is when the professor could say, when this piece was written, there were no toilets.
Yeah.
If people got an infection, they didn't know what they put linseed oil on it. They really didn't know about. Um, People didn't bathe often because they thought they were keeping a protective layer
Yeah.
of their own skin to ward off any evil infections. Napoleon was marching into Paris at this point. There was all these things that can give you perspective on what
Mhm.
was going on, in addition to what was going on personally with the composer's life. Like he had just lost his father had died, or he had just been married, or they had their first child, or they became friends with another composer, and they were so thrilled to hear how that other composer dealt with musical form. All these things work in concert with each other to give you a greater perspective on the music. So that's what I try to do when I have a piece of music. You got to keep it very simple.
Mhm.
Can't go long into a long explanation. You know,
I
you want people to just dig into the music.
yeah, I think that is when someone explained it to me. They said when it comes to classical and music and some forms of electronic, you are trying to make the most complex piece and complex music you can do to sound as simple and easy as possible to sound,
Effortless.
not to have sound like you've got 300 instruments going at one time, but just one
Right.
sound. So I think that was the best way it was explained to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
how did your Christmas album do?
Well, the Christmas album is part of a collection in a music production company called Extreme Music.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the album probably had 14 cuts, and I did three, and I did a fourth one, but that's being used for something else. Um, but I spent a lot of time on those three tracks
Okay.
because it, it it's music that's got to be that's lasts forever. So everything has to just be the form of the music, the compositional concept, everything has to kind of just fall into place so that it plays well now and it will play now well 30 years from now. There's a piece of music that I wrote uh, for a movie called The Wizard of Speed and Time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it in 1983. Um, recorded it with a small orchestra. It sounds really, really nice. It's a really fun piece. And to this day, it plays. From 1983. It
Yeah.
still plays. It was very well recorded. When you listen to the recording, you'd say it was recorded last week. It doesn't have any, there's no weird vintage thing. It's just like a fresh, high fidelity recording of an orchestra, well performed. And it shows up in video game trailers, movie trailers, commercials. It's still used to this day, you
And
know. And it just amazes me that this piece that worked on so long ago is doing so well. Just like the first piece I did for the Disney Channel that
mm-hmm.
got rejected. Uh, they said it sounds too much like Disney. We're trying to brand ourselves to be a more corporate sounding,
Ah.
like the HBO logo at the time. I go,
Mm-hmm.
but the HBO logo isn't Disney. Disney means so. I was trying to tell them they weren't understanding their own brand, anyways.
Yeah.
So I went off from that. They stuck me on the opening trailer for Epcot Center when it first opened in the early '80s,
Wow.
and so I did that corporate sound
Mm-hmm.
for Epcot Center, which really worked well. But years later, I'm gonna say like the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So figure 1981, and now it's 23 years later. I'm with the same people, and we're doing a documentary the about Tinkerbell, about the whole history of Tinkerbell,
Yeah.
how it relates to the Disney brand, and you know what it was in the original Peter Pan books and what have you. And I pulled that piece out and I resequenced it with the all the great samplers I had at the time, and they went, "Oh my God, I love it! I love it!" I go, this is so. And then he looked at each other. This is so Disney. This is so branded. That piece of music they use on the Disney Channel tons of times. I think they use it on Disney Plus for trailers and what have you. I called it the Princess Parade because my daughters love dancing to it.
Ah.
But the funny thing is that when I told them, I go, remember all those years ago when you told me to write something for the Disney Channel? Yeah, this is it. And they go, oh my goodness, it sounds it because they're listening to it with different ears, basically.
Yeah.
They were so set on hearing this corporate sound, and I still don't understand what the hell that meant. But that was a catchphrase in the early '80s when people were trying to brand their company. We want something that sounds corporate. Do you even know what that means? Can you play me an example of
Yeah.
what corporate sounds like? To me, it would sound. To me, when I'm thinking corporate, I'm thinking of like an Air Force instructional video from the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
playing dun, 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 something
I've got
something
vocal
corporate,
samples of
corporal
those.
or whatever. So
And
Anyways, hopefully that I didn't run off too far off on a tangent, but um, so basically that's to illustrate the organization that the outfit that has that administers a lot of my music uh, manages to place it into a lot of quality media,
yeah, and I
and
think,
it's a company founded, by the way, by a fellow by the name of Russell Emmanuel and his partner and Hans Zimmer.
and Hans Zimmerman is a name that just, wow. When people when you put his name out there, it's he was also big into it.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I did, you were talking about quality recording,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think a lot of people really put much into that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I kind of found out the difference. I had a gentleman a few years ago. He brought me a CDR,
Mm-hmm.
and he said I never got to finish the song. I spent $10,000 between 1969 and 1971 in California recording it, and never got to finish
Mm-hmm.
it. Can
Oh
you
my God.
finish it for me? Um, I took that, and 2 weeks later came back with a completely finished song,
Mm-hmm.
drums, everything. It was literally a little guitar and some vocal lines when he
Mm-hmm.
gave it to me. But being able to hear a studio, and I was able to combine that, they did the recording so well, you couldn't tell what was recorded between 1969 and 71 and what I personally did in two
That's
weeks in his
awesome.
studio. And I think a lot of people, when they record stuff, should understand the quality of your
Mm-hmm.
recording has just as much a play as your talent.
Well, I have to ask you a question. You
Mm-hmm.
piqued my interest here.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, let's take the drums. So the drums, maybe it was a great drum part, but it didn't sound that good.
Mm-hmm.
Did you re-trigger the drums or something, or
I
uh,
actually went in and yeah, how you can zoom in on a DAW, I would have it just the minuscule of the sound waves, just depending on what spot, and just that drum was off, I would have just vary until I got it right where I wanted on that
oh, I
sound
see.
wave. I tweaked. I had to do different. I guess recording over time, there was different times where he changed tempo and what he was
Mm,
doing or time. So I'd have to go in. It was surgeon's work
right,
for
right.
getting that. I've never had to do an EQ or a mix and master
Hmm.
that involved, but it was exciting and interesting to push to,
Hmm.
okay, this is not a normal, to actually push into something, like you were saying, something that's really challenging. So I
Right.
mean that was getting down into the nitty gritty and fine
Hmm.
detail of stuff. So I mean that was, I think that's where big a lot of people don't realize how important the quality of the recording is.
Well, you have
Uh,
to realize if you're going to record live musicians, it's very important to have a recording engineer that has keen musical sensibilities.
yeah.
That they know what microphones they use. You tell them basically the sound you're like. I'm looking for a very live, vibrant sound. So
Hmm.
maybe they'll adjust the room so it's a little bit more reflective, and they do all that stuff.
The mic
They
placement, everything.
faithfully get it recorded on whatever medium so that you have the best quality of that. And if you want to manipulate it afterwards, you have that
Yeah.
flexibility. But yeah, it's very, very important.
And I think that's one thing, even recording my own stuff, the slightest tweaks, just the slightest mic movement on, say, a guitar or an amp, or just those little things can add or
Can make
take
a huge
away.
difference.
Yeah, yeah, and that is a big deal. So now you were talking about a dance party deal you got going on.
Oh yeah,
Please do share.
I want to be able to take a selfie though. Can I take a selfie with you? Let me see
Yeah.
if this, let me see how this will look. Okay. Nope. Gotta do this, and let me see here. That's for the Instagram.
All
Hold on.
right.
Let me turn the thing off. Um, I had the flash on. Off. Here we go. Okay. One more. I don't know if that's going to work, but who cares? Anyways, so yes, so I am new to the Killer Clown fan base. I didn't really know it existed. I got a call at the 25th anniversary
Mm-hmm.
from one of the people in the production offices of the Kyoto Brothers that are the creators. Killer Clowns from Outer Space came from the mind of three brothers that grew up loving horror movies and monsters and all things fantastical in film.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got their first chance to do their own film, this is what they came up with. How brilliant is that?
That is, and it's funny watching, finding out how they brought 30 or 40 of you different film composers in for silent screening of it,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Right.
finding out
Well,
you're
it wasn't
leaning.
silent. It just didn't have music
Or
on it.
yeah, that didn't have the music, but the part of you leaning over and it turns out it's one of the brothers when you were talking
Right. I'm
about.
leaning over. Says, "I cannot stand clowns. They scare the shit out of me." And he says, "Yeah, me too." So I
So,
realize I'm sitting next to the director.
do you think
But
that helped
anyways,
get you
so
in?
so initially when it came out, like there's some movies that when they came out, they weren't well received.
Mm-hmm.
So it was with thanks to cable and VHS rentals, it gained an audience, and before you know it, unbeknownst to me, the Kyoto Brothers have been going to all kinds of conventions all over the country and sometimes in Europe, and there are people that they have, body art, tattoos. There's a friend of mine in Connecticut. She's so beautiful, and on her arm she has practically the whole movie on one of her arms as a sleeve. Right? They call
Yeah.
that a sleeve.
Yeah.
So she had her tattoo artist spent, I think, about a year and a half or 2 years
Yeah.
accomplishing that. So there's this massive um, audience that I did not know existed. So one day, on the 25th anniversary, I got a call from one of the production people at the Kyoto Brothers studio, and she says, "Do you want to come to Monsterpalooza? And we have a table. We'll have a chair for you at the table, and you can sell stuff and sign stuff." And I said, "Hold on a second. What the hell is Monsterpalooza? What are we selling, and what do I have to sign?" She says, "Oh no, this is for the fans of Killer Clowns. They're going to come to the convention. It's a fan convention, and like if you have a picture of yourself or some kind of memorabilia you want them to sign, you can charge them for it." And I just totally didn't understand. The whole concept was so completely foreign to me because I was working on a project at a time, and I had no idea. So at this convention, I met so many fans that now I'm very acquainted with and friends with. And I realized, oh my goodness, this is my calling. These people need something. They're saying is there going to be a sequel? Is there going to be a sequel? Is there going to be a sequel? No. Is there going to be a sequel? We don't know. Is there going to be a sequel? It's not up to us. It's up to MGM. But is there going to be a sequel? No. Is there going to be a sequel? Oh, we love to do a sequel. Well, when is that going to be? We don't know because we don't own the property. So it's very frustrating for the fans. So, but they love the movie. They keep watching it. They do dress up parties and cosplay. They cosplay. Universal Studio had a scare zone where they had killer clown, scare actors as killer clown um, characters, and people loved it. The mood was so fun, and I wanted to recapture that again. So what I did is on the 30th anniversary of Killer Clowns, on the week that it was first released in Hollywood, I did a concert with an orchestra and live to film
Mm-hmm.
that was also fun. It was like crazy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Executives at MGM had never seen the movie with an audience, and not only that, an audience that's all dressed up in cosplay, and people with killer clowns tattoos. I have pictures of me with all people that have various killer clown characters tattooed on their arms and their legs, and it's just I felt that I need to give I have it in my control because I own the writer's portion of the music I composed for MGM.
Hmm.
So I always ask them for permission. I would like to put on this type of program for the fans. It's a cosplay dance party. It was supposed to be for New Year's Eve, and I had the show all ready to go, and then there was a big surge in COVID, so we had to, delay that. So we're going to have 4 shows in May of this year here in Hollywood, which will be the 34th anniversary.
Wow.
And this is something that doesn't have a lot of moving parts. It has some moving parts, but not as much as having an orchestra.
Oh yeah.
Because syncing up an orchestra to a live film, there's a lot going on there. Just the task of orchestrating all the music that's been done.
Hmm.
The size of the orchestra, it's a standard orchestra with a rhythm section. That's all completed. Then there's a program. It's kind of like Guitar Hero
Hmm.
that gives the conductor lines and blinking lights and stuff like that I look at, and it has the measure numbers. It tells you what music cue we're playing. All that's done. It's all ready to go. But it takes a lot of personnel. What I'm talking about, this cosplay dance party, it's kind of part um, part DJ set, part cabaret, kind of like Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people
Cool.
can like act out scenes
That's
from the
awesome.
movie. So I feel that this would be a really fun thing to do at conventions, and it's easy to set up. And I've added 2 more tracks to the show
Hmm.
uh, that I'm really thrilled about. So the show that we do in Hollywood, it's going to be at a place called Zombie Joe's Underground Theater,
Oh,
and
nice.
people will enter into like a display area. They'll have Killer Clown art, all kinds of lighting effects, um, big banners and posters. We'll have um, recreations of some of the Killer Clowns that are commercially available through um, Spirit Halloween
Hmm.
and various other, Funko Pop and various other toy manufacturers. Will have all those displayed with lights and stuff like that, little circus tents, and then there'll be the main like party area, so to speak. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and the audience is encouraged because so many people say, "Can I come dressed as Shorty?" Of course you can. You have to be. You have to come as Shorty, because that's what we want. We want everyone. If everyone could be dressed in cosplay, with a Killer Clowns theme, that would be great. So I'm really looking forward to that.
And don't, I'm sitting here, it looks like I'm resting my head. I am focused and absorbing every word because, like I said, this has been a deal for me, you being a composer. This has been exciting. So I'm just absorbing every word you say. So don't think I'm looking at something else. I
Hmm.
am
Oh,
absorbing
no, no, no,
every
not
word.
at all, not at all. And
Because.
just don't think because I'm talking about Killer Clowns, I'm just babbling on.
Now, I was shocked. You've done Paw Patrol even. It recently popped up. You did a couple episodes of Paw Patrol, the music for.
Yeah, that's music that I've written that's licensed to be used in those films.
Yeah.
So in other words, you know, there are times where, for instance, like Netflix did, they used some of my music on Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
They will contact me directly for that in particular, and there are other things that are available through like a broker, so to speak, and they'll have the catalog of music of which mine will be included, and they'll pick out a piece of mine and say, "Oh, this song is really perfect for this scene," and
Yeah.
so that's how they'll use it, and that's how I get into those. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had music on Dancing with the Stars, but they haven't called me personally. They just like basically rented my music through various administrators, that people that administrate my music.
Yeah, I get royalty checks from like Xbox, Microsoft, Sony,
Isn't
and
that
stuff.
great?
Every 3 or 4 months, it's like, okay, I don't even know what song you're using where, but okay, thanks.
Right. That's great that they're acknowledging you in that way.
Yeah,
It's great.
it is, and for musicians a lot nowadays, that's actually you have to get into licensing. It's not record labels, record stores. It's you have
It's
to.
a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, it's very
Live
different.
performance, licensing out your own music, creating. It's very important to try to create new music all the time.
Yeah, and
I mean, not all the time.
yeah,
Let me see. Let me rephrase that. To create quality tracks, that will stand the test of time and be appealing to people and yourself. Because
mhm.
ultimately, it's got to be something that you're fulfilled with.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like on here, I stream working on my own stuff. I don't stream working on client stuff because that's their music, and what have you.
Hmm.
But I do think there is a big difference from being in train focus. Okay, this person I have to create this exactly for this person compared to this is me. That's not it's I want to say something and speak something. It's not what okay this person wants this sound and this style and broke off. So I think I do agree with you. The creating music that you can be comfortable with. I think most artists should probably work on that on a daily basis, even if it's just like 5 or 10 minutes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, one question, and this one actually stems from my wife. What were your most difficult and what were your easiest pieces to do?
From a musical standpoint, it's always great to have a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the more difficult, the more rewarding it is afterwards. That's from a musical standpoint. Now, from a business standpoint, and dealing with um, filmmakers that, um, well, to put it lightly, have emotional instabilities. That's the most difficult part. Um, it's always wonderful to work with a filmmaker that says, uh, "I need terrifying music. This scene here has to be terrifying. It has to scare little children, scare adults." And I'll be working on it, and my daughters will come in from the next room. Dad, can you work with your headphones on because the music you're writing is creeping us out? I go, oh, that's really good, and I'll put the headphones on. But I mean, I love to work with people that can give you direction, just like me with when I express to musicians what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
You know, I keep things the terms and the descriptions short and concise. Don't over explain things because musicians they don't want to listen to me talk. They want to play music. you know and so I've worked with people that said would say, give me directions like make sure you don't use any minor chords because I don't want this to be a depressing movie. I go, that's like telling a baker, please don't use any salt in your cake, even though salt is part of the ingredients, because
Yeah.
you know salt is salty and it makes you thirsty. Yes, but a tiny bit of salt offsets the sweetness in such a way that creates the overall mood. And then you're explaining this to them, and they're looking at you with their eyes glazed. Well, so you're not going to use any minor chords, right?
Hey,
And so I'll go through and they'll hear a piece of music. I really like it. It's really working. Did you use any minor chords? I go, do you want me to answer honestly? Yeah, you need the minor chords to contrast to the major chords. That's what, it's like here, draw me. I want. It's like drawing a picture on a white sheet of paper, and only using white paint. More than likely, you're not going to see the subtlety of brush strokes. Same thing. If you have black construction paper and use black marker, it's going to be kind of tough
yeah.
to see what you're doing. So you need the contrast of, if you're on a white piece of paper, you use like black chalk.
Mm.
You're gonna be able to see the brush strokes, and then the amount of thick black lines and then shaded black lines, and that's how you create an image. And they're still going, okay, can you go through and take out the minor chords then? I don't know what you're talking. I
Eh,
don't know. You know what I mean? And it becomes like it's like you can't have a conversation that way.
yeah.
If no one's understanding the concept, like I wouldn't tell someone's building a house of mine. and I tell them don't use anything made of titanium, and they'll go, well, how come? Because there are certain structures that have to have I don't know. I'm just saying
Yeah,
titanium.
yeah, yeah.
You know, certain components of this house really need titanium, or else we're not going to pass. Yeah, but I just don't like titanium. I
Yeah.
just don't like because they use it in air. They use it in weapons, and I just don't want to have anything that's used in a weapon used in my house. Like, well, make your house out of straw then. You know, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Sometimes people. So this is the difficult thing of working in the media business, because you'll have people that will fixate on something that's really not a concern. You
Yeah,
know.
I can't see how making music flow without a minor chord. It's
Yeah.
somewhere you have to have minors in
Yeah.
there.
So I would recommend anyone getting into any business, in
Mhm.
any interaction that you're going to have with any kind of clientele. Uh, if you Thank God for YouTube, you can study mental instabilities. You can find out someone who's like um, could potentially be diagnosed with some sort of neuroses or psychoses,
Mhm.
you know, and you can identify that, and you can learn either how to work with them or how to avoid working with them. Because there's some people that are very good, and I'm being very honest with you. There are people that are very good at acting very normal and very
Mhm.
cordial, and then once you're committed to work with them, all of a sudden their true colors come out, and you realize now you're in with a whole community of people that are saying, "What did we get roped into? I'm stuck working with this person for the next 6 months."
Yeah.
Someone who just, yeah. You, there's a variety of personality disorders that you have to be able to learn how to identify. And I remember meeting people that like would talk to the person that I accepted the contract with to work, that they literally after 5 minutes talking to them says, I'm really not interested, and walked out. I go, wow, they passed up a great opportunity. No, they know something I don't know. And I would run into that person, and I said, you did a wonderful thing, and oh yeah, I could tell in 5 minutes that working with that particular director was going to be a complete nightmare, and I didn't want to have any. No money is worth it. And I said, wish you would have taken me aside. Well, I didn't know you. If I hadn't known you, I didn't know if you could have been as related a blood relative for all I know. So anyway, so it's really good to ignore that. And you know what? If you get caught up in a situation, make sure you have a clause in your contract that says at any time you can walk away from the project. You
Yeah.
know, because you'll see contracts that are just saying you have to produce or we sue you. You have to produce or we sue you. I go, well, what if I don't like work? I should have a right at some point to say this isn't working for me,
Mhm.
and I'm going to stop at this point, and you can stop your payments at this point as well.
Yeah.
You know,
And that
um,
was a big one. How the contracts and how the rights ownership worked, because I know working in the film cinematography, the owning the rights and everything is much different than
mhm,
someone creating a rock song or hip hop song.
right. Well, it's all negotiable.
Hmm.
Uh, the basic formula is the less someone pays, the more they do not own the rights to it. So you basically become let's say if someone says, "Oh, you usually get, uh, you really need this much money to produce your music for this score. What we can only pay you this much." I go, "Well, fine. Then I become an owner of the music. You're just paying me for the effort that I'm going through,
Hmm.
right? And the expertise. But when the music's finished, it's mine. I can like license it out to someone else. I can sell it. I can keep it for myself. And you have no participation in any income that comes from that music." And some people are fine with that
Hmm.
because they're just at a point where they hopefully hopefully they like your music, not
Hmm.
just music. Like, here, slap some music on there.
Yeah.
If you just need to like throw music on it, there's a million music libraries that you can. But music libraries, they charge fees, and it can be to if you're going to score like a relatively low budget indie film with library music, you could be spending like upwards of 60 to $100,000 in licensing fees.
Yeah.
And by that time, you could have paid someone whose music you really like. You could probably pay them a portion, uh, that much money, or probably a little bit less,
Hmm.
to do the music that you need. Um, so it's important to have that lined out in your contract, have it looked over by an attorney, make sure there's no little loopholes. Some contracts are so boilerplated
Hmm.
that you really have to look. There's like archaic terms. Like there was a contract I signed several months ago that was talking about delivering the audio tapes. No one delivers audio tapes anymore. I mean, that's like a special request now. You mean can we change that to audio files?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, and there used to be a digital cassette format called DA88.
Hmm.
No one uses them anymore.
Uh,
No one uses that anymore. It's all audio files that will not be delivered by hand, or not delivered by Federal Express. They'll be sent in Dropbox,
yeah.
which is called what do you call a file format delivery platform or whatever,
Yeah.
and so you'll have to like go through and make sure you take out all these sort of things. It was really funny. I actually had mining property some years ago, and in the contract they were talking about uh, the okay, what's the word I'm looking for? They were talking about care and housing and storage of uh, pack animals, mules that will draw. That's literally from 1880, And I go, are you serious? You guys, I've been to your site. You have like the latest excavation equipment. And they go, oh, that's just a boilerplate. Okay, can we just take it out? And they were talking about dynamite. No one uses dynamite anymore. There's chemical explosives that are
yeah.
being used.
Yeah. Oh. Oh my
So
gosh.
I just went through and I made a big deal taking that out, and I do that in music contracts because people just download them
Hmm.
from some site that has a ton of boilerplate music contracts,
Yeah. You
and so
can
you
buy
have to go
books of them.
through and and take time, get away from your music studio, get at a table with a nice light, and go line by line. And what doesn't work for you, you have to like negotiate out
Hmm.
or adjust,
I also think a
or
big
you have an attorney do it for you.
exactly. I think
You
there's
know,
sometimes some people get too gun ho, and maybe they should take a step back and take it to an attorney because
yeah.
it's not
There's nothing
all.
wrong with sitting down and reading a 12-page document.
Yeah. And
You should be able to do that. And then there's tons of YouTube tutorials that will take you through what you need to know about a music contract, especially if you're doing games.
hmm.
You know, um, they may say, okay, we're going to pay you this much of money for this much of music, minutes of music. You can participate in sales. You'll get so many cents per unit after we sell. Like I'm just picking out numbers that is not. Don't quote me. After we sell 1,000 units, then you will from after that you'll participate at this level. You'll get this many cents per units we sell, and then perhaps after that, there's a
Hmm.
tier system.
Yeah.
They call them milestones. At this milestone, when 5,000 have been reached, then you can get this much per unit. And then there's the times where it says, well, we can't afford to pay you anything, as far as uh, participating in sales of product.
Hmm.
In that case, well, good, I get to keep the uh, copyrights to the music. That's what I want. And they said, well, maybe we can do half of that. Well, maybe you can pay me more. This is where having a good agent comes in.
Yes.
So I would recommend, and if we want to talk about the nitty gritty of agents, if you, let's say a reputable game company calls you and loves your music, we listen to your band's music, all this, your music would be great. Can we either license or have you write new music for our video game? That's when you can approach a composer agent and introduce yourself and say, I've been approached, I've got a contract from whatever, PlayStation, who
Hmm.
knows,
Hmm.
or Riot Games, has asked me to do a score. Then you're going to get a call returned
Hmm.
because that's someone they can deal with. Because a known entity is interested in what you do and will be agent's job is to negotiate the best possible deal for you, and for that they get anywhere between 10 to 15% depending on the agency. So but the agent isn't going to get you that gig,
Hmm.
but the agent will answer the phone on your behalf. Let's face it, if Riot Games is looking for Danny Elfman, they're going to call Danny Elfman's agent.
Hmm.
They're not going to call Danny Elfman. They're going to call his agent. And in that case, the agent sometimes screens the call to see this may or may not be worth my client's time, and let me run it by my client, see if he's interested or she's interested, and then they become the liaison.
Hmm.
So I hope that's kind of clear.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a composer agent, it's good to either have a attorney speak on your behalf. Attorneys sometimes can negotiate it for you, but you want to be able to um, do as much as you can on your own. You have to have a thick skin.
And that's I think one thing. Sometimes you got to step back from your art when it comes
Yeah,
to the business side, because artistically it might be great, but people in suits don't always worry about the art. They worry about what they're getting from it.
right. And I've been offered really horrible films, but it's in a genre I've never done.
Hmm.
And I said, sure, I'll do it. And and I keep all the music, and the other production personnel will say, I think you're doing music for a different movie that's got a bigger budget. Yeah, I don't care if this doesn't have a bigger budget. My music is going to sound as best as it possibly can because I'm using it for other stuff.
Yeah.
So I basically I'm working. I'm for my benefit on someone else's dime. I know that sounds horribly capitalistic of me, but I mean, there's still an exchange. They're getting a good music score. I'm getting music that I can use, and I'm kind of getting compensated for it. And there are other times where it's like, frankly, sometimes you get overcompensated. You don't even realize it,
Yeah.
and you're getting paid for what you really are worth. I worked in commercials for quite a while, and it's amazing at the amount of money that's spent on just a 60-minute piece of music.
Yeah. The
60
money.
minute commercial that may only have 15 seconds in it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get paid more doing that than a TV series episode.
And that's crazy. Like that 15-second jingle can make quite quite a bit of money, and there's
Yeah.
people who do that very
And
lucratively.
now that there's, commercials are playing on YouTube and all the streaming services, it's like it's absolutely incredible.
So that's just amazing. Now, what other projects you got? You got any exciting projects going on otherwise, or just getting ready for the dance party and 34th anniversary?
Well, there's the 34th anniversary dance party. There's a number of appearances I'm doing. There's going to be another music program that I can't speak of in uh, in the summer
Hmm.
here in Los Angeles. I'm gearing up for next year. I'm doing an enhanced music soundtrack for the Killer Clowns movie itself
Nice.
to exhibit with the movie, and that I could talk about because it's kind of a general sort of thing.
Mm.
It's not finalized, but that's my goal, and I'm going to be working on other projects that I can't announce yet, but I will be able to announce in October.
Hmm. I will say real fast. I thought of it. Creepy World is the horror movie convention here. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, you should really look. That is the biggest horror movie and special effects makeup convention in the United States. And it's
I would
actually here
love
in
to
Los
come.
Angeles.
I would love to come.
I,
I think I had contacted them once before, and I spent 15 minutes explaining what I do, and they still didn't understand it. but maybe they do now.
y-
If you want to introduce me to them, I'll be happy to talk to them. They'd
Gladly, I
love to
can
come
give you
out.
some of my contacts because Phobius FX used to sponsor me. They're actually one of the huge vendors, and they put on huge
Hmm.
tutorials there too.
Well, I
So
know that after I truly believe that after I put on this cosplay show, we'll have plenty of video of it. It'll be something that the conventioners would say, "Oh gosh, we have to have this. This will
oh
be
yeah.
fun for," because every is it my imagination or is every convention people come dressed up as their favorite, horror movie character?
I you know what? I cannot say.
Oh, because you don't go to them.
Well,
Okay,
no, I
that's
go to
fine.
it. No, I'm saying I can't imagine. I can't. I can do the conventions and everything. It's just something shock and trauma from an actual horror movie. But I can say 99% of the time at these conventions, people are dressed up, or it's people who are like the just intensity are wearing their favorite shirts or stuff
Right.
and stuff. But there is some form of audience participation and interaction
So I
across
am
the.
making something for them to come to.
Yeah, and I think that is so cool. You
That is not just, because I mean, I love sitting at a table, signing autographs and what have you, and selling my soundtrack CDs. But I'd much rather be giving people some music to to groove to.
yeah, yes, and I think that that is so awesome, and I can't wait to see videos of that. So and again, I like to find out some funny stories, some of the silliest, goofiest, or funny stuff. Like I like people to share before we start finishing everything up and getting the final
Okay.
few minutes. What are some good ones that you got that over the years, just some that stick out?
Oh my gosh, there's like so many.
I can only imagine with your extensive career.
There's so many. Um, okay, I don't even know if this is funny, but I'll tell you anyways. There was a director I was working with, and I was just starting to record the tracks. And he's basically a very shy kind of guy, and he has never really dated or went out on dates. Was even in high school. So now that he's in his early 30s, he met a girl he was dating, and he wanted to show off and come by the recording studio as I was laying down tracks. And he came by, and I think I laid down the bass and some little percussion parts, just little like triangles and things like that. Maybe some kind of chord progression on a synthesizer or something like that. Just basically not even 3% of what is going to be happening. There was so many layers that weren't recorded yet. And he says, "Can I have a cassette of this? I'd like to listen to it." And I go, "No, because it's not finished. I mean, it's just not finished." And he just insisted on it. So I gave it to him, and so I recorded all day, into up until like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Calls me at 1 in the morning. He says, "I've been listening to this cassette of yours. Yeah, it's really not cutting it for me." I go, "Yeah, it's not done. Yeah, it's really thin, and there's not many instruments. Yeah, it's not done. I will give you the basically 98% finished track tomorrow, but right now I need to go to sleep." "Yeah, I'm really wondering about maybe it's not maybe music for the scene isn't right, because if it's going to sound like that, no, it's not going to sound like that." "Okay, are you hearing me? So so what you're reacting to is as if, would you show like one take of one scene, a pickup shot from your movie, and put it in the movie theaters?" "Yeah." "No, of course not." "Well, okay, well, that's the same thing with that." So this argument. So what I learned is there's something that I could do. I could just do this, talk to you tomorrow, and hang up and unplug the phone, and they're just gonna have to wait it out. Instead, I spent like 45 minutes explaining. "You see, you're laughing. It's funny. I was
But
miserable. I wanted to go to
yeah, at
sleep
that
so
point,
bad.
yeah.
I wanted to go. My eyes were just like my eyes were rolling up like that. And like, I probably sounded like I was completely inebriated. But see, to you it sounds funny. See, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yeah, yeah, and see right there. That's I can imagine that situation. You were probably just wanting to reach through the phone and wring his neck.
I go,
No.
yeah. I says, it's really annoying here. You're just not hearing me, are you? You know, I mean, it's like, imagine if like Walt Disney was going to present to the public Disneyland while he just started grading off the property, and all you saw is a bunch of piled up dirt, and then you said, "This is going to be Disneyland." Well, I don't see any amusement park, and
Yep.
he still didn't get it. I was trying to use all sorts of other comparisons. And there's some people you just got to learn to hang the phone up on. You know, see, you're laughing. I was miserable. You're laughing at my misery, and you're still laughing.
Yeah. Now, people like me who are getting in, new to composing, working
Uh
with
huh.
other people's pieces, what kind of advice can you give to, like I discussed? I've been streaming, redoing the Nutcracker. I'm working on my own original ballet. What kind of advice can you give to people starting to get into actual true composing and composition?
Well, two things: keep creating music, and you want to be acquainted with and communicating with and having some sort of relationship, even if it's just a cordial acquaintance, with people that can exhibit that music, whether they're filmmakers. I mean, there's like thousands of filmmakers and content creators.
Mm-hmm.
So to get yourself in front of their eyes and ears is what's important. And thanks to social media, you have that. I mean, you, for instance, could probably stick up your iPhone or a camera and take visuals of like 30 seconds, a minute, and put it on Instagram, you know,
Mm-hmm.
3 times a week,
Yeah.
and put the right hashtags like my studio,
Mm-hmm.
creating music, work in progress, um, all these little things that are intriguing to the people that find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Hence, it will attract the attention of people that say, you know, I mean, I've hired musicians
Mm-hmm.
because they do just that. You know, there was her name is BB Cates, and she's a bass player, and she'll just sit there and just play a rock and bass part to something. At one time I said, "Would you mind playing bass on this track? I'll send you the track, and if it interests you, I'd love for you to play on it." And she did. And then there's a variety of musicians and singers and all sorts that I've kept an eye on. That when the time comes, you know, I would approach them to, you know, to work with me. So the same thing happens um, with content creators and directors and filmmakers,
That's.
because not all of them know everything about music, and
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of like at your mercy,
Yeah.
you know. And I would say also, don't let yourself be pushed around, because there's some filmmakers that think they know everything about everything, and they think they know music backwards and forwards, and you know, and you know, they're not, they want to compose the music they want to hear in their head via you, and that's not the way it should be. They should be, they should like like I recognize musicians and artists that do what they do really well,
Mm-hmm.
and I bring them into my project, not so that I can manipulate them, so they can bring that energy into my project.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the way it should. I mean, you can go on all these media employment sites like Mandy and gosh, various filmmaker forums that directors looking for cinematographer, you know,
Mm-hmm.
producer looking for actors, for musicians, for composers, everything, you know. And it amazes me. I don't know what the other disciplines are like, but when it comes to music, they say, need a composer to compose score for film that's this long, and we can pay you $500. Well, that's like saying I need someone to hang wallpaper in my house. I mean, the last place I would go would be some forum like that. I
Mm-hmm.
want to search the internet, the vast internet, for someone that I want to work with. You know, there are people here in the United States, in Europe, in the Soviet Union, in all the European countries, well, not the Soviet Union, excuse me, it's called Russia now.
Yep.
All throughout Europe, England, Israel, that I've discovered via social media that I really love what they do. And so I asked them to work. I didn't put an ad out looking for a violin player.
Mm-hmm.
No. I saw a violin player that not only plays violin, he plays viola, he plays cello, and he does it incredibly well. Or there might be a group, like a string group or a brass group that they play for remote recordings, and they make great music. I'll hire that person because I've heard what they heard that group heard what they can do. Same thing here in LA. There are people around here that that I hire or that I work with that it's on the merits of what they do, not
Mm-hmm.
that they just do it. Like I'm not going to say I need a trumpet player. No, 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 no. I need the trumpet player, and I will look for the trumpet player that has the experience and sound and ability to work remotely. And if even if he or she can't, I will find a way to record them.
Yeah.
I just want their sound. So I think that's the big mistake I see on a lot of these employment sites. Ask talking about getting a composer, like you shouldn't even be. If you're looking for a composer, you shouldn't be on that site. You should be looking for a composer through social media that see what they have on their social media. It's available through their SoundCloud, their Bandcamp, their Reverb Nation, all these platforms, and I would be combing through those. When I look for someone to help me with programming,
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy I call here. He knows all the newest guys because he does commercials. He's constantly doing uh, contracting for music for with all the big video game companies and for live performances and recording sessions for movies, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I ask him, he gives me some names. I look at some people that have demonstrated stellar skills in programming, and I'll approach them. He says, "Listen, I'm going to give you this kind of material, like basic outline. I need you to like blow it out of proportion," and they can just do it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to put an ad. I need someone to program because I'm going to get 10,000 people say, "Oh, I've got whatever. I've got Ableton Live,
Yeah.
and I've got this library. I don't care about if you have that library. What do you sound like? What is your music like? You know."
Now, what's your?
Sorry, I went off on a rant.
Oh
Is that
no, no,
okay?
and this is I'm enjoying it. When you get the programming real fast, what's your favorite DAW to use? I just everybody's got their personal preference. I'm just curious what your favorite
Well,
DAW
I
is.
use I use Digital Performer,
Mm-hmm.
Mark Unicorns, Digital Performer. I have used Logic and I have used Pro Tools, and I have used Ableton, but I do prefer Digital Performer.
All right. I've actually Cubase for like the past 20 years, so I actually remember Mark of the Unicorn and Emu Music. I started on Emu
Right,
Music in the 90s.
right, right.
So it's just interesting seeing what different people's favorite DAW is.
Hmm.
So again, I thank you so much for your time. I
Thank you.
will.
It's been really great. I hope I didn't talk your ear off.
No, and I'll have to send you some samples of what I'm working with the Nutcracker. I know you're interested in hearing that, so
Hmm.
definitely I'll have to shoot some samples over to you so you can
Please,
check
please
it out.
do.
So again, thank you, John.
Thank you.
If you're not nuts busy in October, if you've got a free minute, maybe you can swing back by and talk about some of your horror movie flick sounds. We can focus just on those because it's that time of
Sure.
year. But again, just thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting down, and you have such a wealth of knowledge. I greatly appreciate it. To all the viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, it gets switched to YouTube 24 hours after it airs on Twitch, twitch.tv/junkiebase, and you can catch our interviews. And John is going to, as long as he's got the time, he's going to sneak back in and sit down with us. So, guys, until next time, never give in, never give up. Peace, fellas.